know if that's the true, actual etiquette response, but I have a friend who told me that. So if someone says, shall we, you say, yes, yes, let's shall. So we're shalling. So thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad to be here and really grateful. And it's an honor and a privilege always as an artist to talk about your work and share it with other people. And so I'm just really happy to be here. Your campus is really beautiful too. I don't know if y'all walking every day appreciate it as much as I do coming today, but I hope you do because it's gorgeous physically. Beautiful buildings, grounds, etc. It's really nice, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you. Let's see. So I'm going to do like 3 kind of parts to this talk, and I'll just say this is not a huge, overwhelming size group, so we can just have it like a conversation. So if I say something, you can be like, wait, what was that? Or wave your hand to say, can I ask, or just ask a question, or say something, or etc. How's that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, I think that works, you know, and just have fun. My thing is have fun and learn and go back and forth between the two, and hopefully they're all happening all at once. So that's true for me too. Like, maybe you're here to learn, maybe you're here to just enjoy, hopefully both, and I am too. Because I always learn when I talk about my work. Even last night at the critique, I don't think she's here. But one of the students, you know, I was like, could you get obsessed with this technique? What was her name?
Melissa.
CMYK.
Melissa.
Yeah, and she was like that. And I was like, oh, yeah. Anyway, I could get obsessed, and I have been, so this is good. And I realized that last night. Yeah, I could just own being obsessed sometimes. So. Anyhow, so we're going to jump back to the PowerPoint in a minute, but I want to start out with just a quick introduction. So my background, Carolyn said I did an MFA. I finished that in 2000. I was in book arts at the University of Alabama. Book arts there is letterpress printing, handbook binding, anything related to the handmade craft of the book. So I did that degree, and before I was done, I got hired in New York City as the executive director at the Center for Book Arts because I could type. And so they hired me to type and lead, and I did all that for 4 years. It was really great. I loved the center. That's where I met Rebecca. I call you Rebecca still. Should I say Becky?
Whatever you like.
Well, my roommate and friends call my inner black girl Becky. So if I ever snap and do neck, then they're like, Becky's here, watch out. So anyway, I don't know if I can give you my inner black girl's name. But so anyway, that's why I met Becky. She was in a show I curated like 9 years ago, and it was great. And so anyway, I left that job after 4 years because I took the job out of school. And some of you might relate. I was like, I'm not focusing fully on my own art, and that's what I want to do. So things there were great, and I still teach there and other things at the center, but I'm just doing my life as an artist, and that's what's really been interesting the past 8 years, is applying my typing and leadership skills to my art career, and really focused on that. So that's been really great and empowering and exciting. The first thing I did was this series here of work called Your One Black Friend. That's the kind of title piece. So I'll just run through these quickly. This was large. Well, I can do this. Facebook's not as good. It's not a PowerPoint. But anyway, this is like large scale-ish oils on canvas. And I was doing some research. Read a book called A Country of Strangers, Blacks and Whites in America. And the guy talks about, journalist, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, talks about how blacks and whites are isolated. And he says, yeah, this is a country with a lot of social injustice, but the fountainhead of injustice is between blacks and whites. And so that's the thing that, you know, he's arguing needs to be addressed or could be addressed. And talks about like being at a school, a college, at lunch, and black kids are over here and the white kids are over here, and they don't really interact. And then a lot of the white people you interview have one black friend. So I did this series called Your One Black Friend, sort of exploring those issues. My work is figurative. This work isn't erotic. My work is sort of turned erotic, homoerotic, if you will, and there's been violence throughout it. So I'm just going to show these. I'm not talking about them much, just to sort of, this is 8 years ago.
Rory, I think that Facebook does let you show on full screen if you scroll up.
Like just go up a little. Then on the top corner should show.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not worried about it.
All right.
I just want to run.
No problem.
This is old. So you just get a sense. It's figurative work, like 5 by 3 feet. This one, 3 by 5 feet, really. And some of the themes or motifs or whatever you want to say are still coming out in my work now. But the work has been figurative for a long time. I did a lot of figure drawing. I love the figure. And so that's what you see. And this one's called Texas. It was thinking about the murder of James Byrd in Jasper, Texas. 2 white racists ran over his body with a car to fake it. Oh, no. They dragged his body behind a car until it disintegrated. And that was in Jasper, Texas. So this was sort of thinking about that. That's the title piece. That one's 12 by 6 feet, 4 panels. Detail. I want to get to these other ones. So these are tar drawings, and it's roofing paper that I scrape tar on and then pour house paint and scrape the house paint, so then you have 3 layers. Then you can do what a sgraffito or scratch through or reductive drawing through the house paint, which is a lighter color. In this case, that lilac color is the house paint, and the line is the drawing through that surface to reclaim the dark tar and tar paper underneath, and then I spray it with a solvent and it drips and does other things, and then I go on top like that purple darker color is oil kind of wash. These are all like 3 by 5 feet. So then I just want to give you a sense of the back, like that's, you know, older work, and just to introduce. And there was another one in here. Where is it? So I finished that work, and I was on a residency in Montana in the mountains, and the place was haunted. Has anyone ever lived in a place where you know there's like ghosts or something going on? Does that make sense to anyone? Maybe it doesn't. Yeah, so I just knew it. Oh, you think this building does?
Yeah, there's a whole article.
Oh yeah, so this place I know, it was a former mining town, and they turned these buildings into, like these 2 little buildings were turned into artist housing studio, and I just always had these weird thoughts that was weird. And my neighbors who are also artists, one of them would wake up and the doors would be opening and closing, and she was a female and had poltergeisty, which usually I think poltergeists attach to female human beings in a way. Have you heard that? I have, anyway, whatever. And Simon, the other guy who was a screenplay writer of horror films, always heard whispering in his ear. So at some point, like 2-3 months in, I was like, you guys, this is so weird. And they were like, yeah, me too. So it was like confirmed that it was like, okay, I'm not just, you know, having weird things happen. And then I did this woo-woo magic, you know, white light energy healing crystal ritual, and then it all went away and I was happy. So that was good, because I didn't want to be around all that mess. But I did, when I was done with that work, like literally I finished that series, which was a huge amount of work, woke up the next day, and I was like, oh, I'm going to West Virginia and I'm going to research that murder. And I just had this project formed fully in my consciousness. So I spent 3 years working on this project. It's called Sea-Related Story, The Murder of J.R. Warren. And I'm not going to go through these totally, but so what happened in the murder is J.R. Warren was a black gay man in rural West Virginia, and he was having a down-low relationship with these 2 white teenage boys who were nearly 18, so there were age issues, which was weird and twisted, and they thought he was talking about their sex, and so they beat him up. Then they put on steel-toed boots. Now they were high, huffing gasoline. Has anyone ever done that? I haven't. I don't know about that. But they were really, really messed up, right? And then they put on their steel-toed boots and they kicked the crap out of him until he was unconscious. And then they were like, oh no, what should we do? And you know, then they put his body in the back of the car and drove outside of town, dumped his body, ran over his body 3 or 4 times with the Camaro to fake a hit-and-run car accident, went home. So eventually all this came out, and it was, you know, community upheaval, very small mining, post-mining town in West Virginia, and lots of other stuff about that. But I moved there to the town where it happened 5 years later to research the murder and look at it, and lived there for 6 months, and It was interesting. I mean, doing that project certainly changed me in my life in a lot of ways. I didn't know anybody moving there. I just was like, I'm coming from New York to do this. Hello. And so it was kind of scary and interesting and, you know, a lot of wild things. But I just remember like the moment I had written to Brenda Warren, JR's mother, and never heard from her several times. And tried to just network, whatever, and never heard from her. And I moved there not having heard from her, not even knowing if it was okay with her to do this, etc. But I was like, I'm going to do it. And so finally, after I was there maybe I was there a month and a half, I was taking a nap, and my phone rings, and she says, "Hi, Rory, this is Brenda Warren." And so that was like the beginning of this new journey of doing this project. So what I ended up doing with the work was, it's an installation, works on paper that, can you guys read that okay? Is okay? So I did these two-sided images, and the installation has automobile rear view mirrors on the wall. And the mirrors allow you to read these texts on the back of the images that are written backwards. So you can't look at the paper and read it, you have to look in the mirror to read them. And then those texts are statements from my research that I discovered. And there are 52 of these statements that sort of run down the page. So that says over and over, he was considered by, I think, many to be the town's mascot. So talking about J.R. Warren. Someone else said, what else could it be? What else could it be? What else could it be? Thinking about whether or not it was a hate crime. Certainly that was a conversation around all this. What is a hate crime law, et cetera, et cetera. Another one says maybe 50 times, maybe 50 times, maybe 50 times, over and over down the page, which is one of the killers in his confession saying how many times he kicked J.R. on the head with his boots. You know, so that sort of thing. So it gives you a take on the murder and its aftermath. But you, the viewer, are in the place of the killers because you have to look in the rearview mirrors to read these statements. So in a way, it sort of implicates everyone in this incident. Like that, is sort of the notion. So that's two sides of one piece, you know, so you kind of get that. So I finished that, you know, 2008, 7, it toured for a year, and then I just landed personally in a place where I was like, I don't know who I am or what I'm doing. I was kind of lost, you know? Like, I don't know. Like, what do you do after you spend 3 years thinking about a violent murder that wasn't even yours to think about in a way? But my intention was to transform conversations in our society around race, specifically black-white, and also around sexuality, acceptance, etc. But I kind of didn't, I was just lost and sort of like, I don't know, and, you know, all sorts of other things happened. But I continued to make my art, and so I had the chance to move to Atlanta, and that sort of was like the beginning of a new sort of body of work for me. And in Atlanta, I was living in, has anyone been to Atlanta? So it's a cool town, I liked it a lot, but I was living near a place people sometimes called Chicken Junction, which was Ponce de Leon and Boulevard Avenues. And it's a gentrifying area, so there's a lot of like middle-class people of all races moving in and buying houses and making them nicer, if you will. And then on Ponce, it's like tranny, hooker, drug dealer, hustler, everybody's up in there. So you go to the corner store and it's like man in a business suit with his small child and tranny hooker lady, you know, trying to buy drugs. And that was sort of the atmosphere there. It was very strange, wild, interesting, and Southern Gothic in a way, like very like odd. So that's where I was living. I literally lived almost on that corner. And it was weird. I would walk and see chicken bones because it was called Chicken Junction because there had been several chicken restaurants right there. People would eat the chicken bones and do whatever and then throw the chicken bones on the sidewalk. So anyway, I don't know. So then I did this series called Chicken Bones. And it was just a way of working. These are works on paper. 40 inches square-ish, maybe, something like that, 38 inches square. So I'll just show them, and if you have a question, you can ask, you know. If you want to say, what's that, or whatever. That's a man having a baby, just so you know. That's you know, there it is. There's he's having his baby. I don't know, chicken leg. So, you know. The thing is, I think sometimes people like your work's upsetting or too weird or something, and I don't ever think that way. I'm just working. You know what I mean? I'm just making what I make and happy to make it. And I don't upset myself when I work usually. Although I have been crying when I work, but I cry all the time anyway, so it doesn't matter. You know, I can walk down the street and cry. So it's just, you know, whatever. I cry. Okay, fine. So anyway.
Rory, do you keep a sketchbook or preparatory things, or do you go right in?
For the work? No, I work really spontaneously. I've done so much drawing, and I really trained myself in doing figure drawing to be like, to where I would just draw. I work a lot with lines, so I'd be like, sketchbooks I've done in the past have been all about that too. It hasn't been preparation. And you know, I'm going to show you maybe a little bit of a project I did last summer, and my whole idea was that it was all sketched out. It was going to be this huge installation of these hanging books. And then I got to this residency, and I ended up making videos. So, I mean, you know, I don't know, it's not... But I did spend a year researching the J.R. Warren project, and 9 months planning and thinking, and doing a lot of tests with materials. I didn't show all that, but I literally spent 9 months testing materials. What am I going to use to make this work? And, you know, I heard this morning, oh, I don't have time or money from students to do what I want to do kind of thing. Forget that. Because I know, like, when I went to do that, I had barely money to live on, which has often been the case, but who cares? I was committed to my work. That's what I was doing. And then when I did that project, I didn't have a budget for materials. I took in my station wagon to the residency, which I was fortunate to have. It was a 3-month program with space. And I did have a year of residencies to plan and do the project. Residencies where someone somewhere gives you space and time to work, right? So I had a studio, it was a live workspace. I just took everything I had. I took a bunch of old acrylic paint, all my crayons, and paper I got in Japan 10 years ago when I was flush. I could have done large-scale works, but I didn't have the budget. But I was committed to doing it, and I got it done. I think it worked for what it was. So, did I answer your question? That's a long answer.
Good answer. I have another little one. Do you work on one piece at a time?
These, yes. But the newer work I'll show you, I was working across 4 or 5 pieces. Okay. And I think you can see it when I show them. So. So you can see stuff carrying over image-wise from the older work. Oh, the dogs. I always put a dog in those because I was ticked. My first major sale to a private collector was this $2,000 or $3,000 dog painting. And I was happy for the sale, but I was unhappy because I can draw dogs in my sleep. And it was so easy to do, and then they were like, oh, we want that. And I was like, don't you want my important work or whatever? But, I mean, it was fine. But so then there's a 6 by 3 foot dog. And great, fine. But so when I was doing the chicken bones piece, those pieces, I was like, I'm going to put a freaking dog in every one of these drawings, and they're going to sell. So, and some of the dogs, I don't know if well, let's go back and look at dogs. This childbirth dog, or are they different? It kind, I mean, what's the same? I don't know. The same or different? Who knows? But it was similar-ish. So that dog, but some like I let some blue drip on him, and that one he's dripping. He's on a chain. That one he's all covered with blood. This one he's completely covered up. You can barely see it. It's in there somewhere. Like I just covered the dog up. Same thing here. There's dogs in there. I might have covered them up with like white paint, you know. I was just like, now he's hanging. The dog is hanging, and that dog. The dog is there is covered up. That's a blue rat, not a dog. Just to tell you.
Is that a dog? Any of the other one?
No, those are blue rats.
Oh, they're both rats.
The dog's. I got mad at the dog. I would scratch him out instead, you know. So. Yeah. So, and then this is newer work I did after that. I called this whole series Extra Fresh. I ended up have you ever lived with someone and then you were like, I don't want to live with this person, but it's cheap, so I'm going to stay here? So, if it's a crackhead, addict, hustler, don't live with that person is all I can tell you. It's not a good idea, even if it's free housing. If someone has 3 houses and they tell you that you can stay there for free, you better get a contract. Even if you've known them a long time. So, that's what happened. Never mind. That was near Chicken Junction. So I stayed in my bedroom a lot and just did these little pieces. And I was watching Tyra Banks on America's Next Top Model. And I would work and draw. And literally these are this big. And again, I was working like I do all the blue maybe. And then I do all the drawing. So I was working across all these pieces. I did like 50 of them. But there was a point where Tyra says to someone, "You do not have a fresh face." So... so I did this series called Extra Fresh. I don't know why. And then, I like to ruin things and destroy them and then see if I can save them. Does that make sense? Like I was saying, it was the CMYK woman last night. I said, rephotograph and rephotograph. Like take a photograph, put it somewhere and rephotograph and keep going. So like these, they were pretty, if you will, and then I decided to get out a bottle of black ink and just cover them with black circles, which could be the ruinification. But I think it worked and I liked it. And, I could put all sorts of maybe philosophy behind what I'm doing. Like you could ask me, what does this or that mean? I could tell you. And for me, it's like I like it is where I end up, if I like it. Which may be too simplistic, or maybe not, I don't know. So these pieces is a whole series called Flowers for the God of Love. And I think I moved a little away from all the violence and craziness to do these. They're more erotic in a way, and they have that kind of dreamlike quality, but I think they're a little less violent. So my life was changing too, which is good, and the work reflects that. But you see a lot of layers. And I think the growth of the green that speaks to change too. And I did those 4 or 5 across to answer your question, Rose. So I was working on a wall and just going back and forth across 5 pieces. They're like 36 inches tall. So this I stopped. This one I didn't stop, but they look kind of the same, So you see the layers kind of happening. Like going from here to here, or to here. So that's an earlier stage, but I stopped those particular pieces at that place because I liked it. So still thinking about our society, and it's reduced to this icon of a map, of sort of the child's map of the USA. I like those.
Are they part of a book?
No. This has book pages. I like to rip books up and use the pages. So can you read that there? Like this is a little 6-inch tall book page that I laminated to this bigger sheet of paper, 8 by 10, and then did the drawing on top of. I used to do a lot and teach a lot of altered book page workshops with a lot of surface design stuff. But it's interesting that you can have a text pop out that sort of is like a surrealist technique in any case, I guess. This is a book. This is the last edition book I did like 8-9 years ago. It's called Hidden Mountains. And part of the reason I started to make books is because I used to write. I started out as a writer. My mom was a painter. She went to school after I finished high school. She went to school and did a BFA in painting for 5 years. And when she did that, she said to me, "You should go major in art." And I said, "Are you crazy? I won't be able to make any money. I'm going to major in business." Now, that was an utter failure, right? So, but we never listened to our moms anyway, maybe for a while. So, so I went into business. That lasted half a semester. and then ended up being like a writing poetry, and I did that for several years, and then I started to draw, and I was like, I like to draw more, and that's what I want to do. And then I started to put them together in books, and lived in Japan for a while, and studied Zen Buddhism and all this. So the poem is an homage to Dogen, the Japanese Zen philosopher. Has anyone taken Japanese something? So, you know, it was thinking about his philosophy. So, but the figure still is in there. It's an accordion book. Letterpress printed, edition of 40. I like that image most. That's the Buddha cutting off his hair when he renounces the world. Do you know about that? Does anyone shave their head sometimes? Yeah? Is it an act of anything for you? Besides shaving your head?
I'd fat and bone bald, but I don't keep up with it.
Does it have any meaning to you?
Especially now.
No. I mean, I'll shave my head when I'm not happy with something. Like, I usually shave it in the summer anyway, but if I'm sick of something, and my hair will grow, I still have hair that grows, which is a miracle, and I'll just shave my head like that day. Does it? Okay.
I have a question, Rory.
Yes, question.
What kind of artists were you looking at this point?
What kind of what?
Who are you looking at in terms of artists at this point?
Right now?
No, like this earlier stage you said.
I wasn't. I mean, I was aware of other artists, but I wasn't like seeking out artistic influences at that point.
Did any kind of seep in? Like, I mean.
Oh, sure. I mean, people will often reference Jean-Michel Basquiat's work with mine, which I take as a total compliment because I think he's incredible. Yeah. If I looked back at other, like, not even influences, but sort of cousins and forebears, would be like, if you know Max Beckmann's work, a German expressionist, you know, Ivan Schule, etc. And I'm part German, Slovakian, Irish, something, so I think that it's just in my genes that. But even Cy Twombly you could look at with some of the, because I think, especially the way I get paint on is more, I mean, there's an abstract quality to it. It's not like, but the lines, so I don't know. But these days, I mean, there's a whole other slew of artists that I love, so who knows? Yeah? This is a hanging book. It folds up into this little pile and fits, and you can't read that box very well. And then it hangs on the wall. And I did a couple of these. So this image is familiar from that other one, the Texas painting, and I decided to translate it into a book format. And again, one of the problems I saw at the Center for Book Arts was creating an exhibition. And again, I think Rebecca's show, which is at the University of New England right now, and you should find out about that, sublime installation of books. And one of the problems artists have in displaying books is, how do I display books so someone could read the book? So doing these kind of things was part of my solution to that. So it folds up into this little box. Those are 4 by 6 inch pages, and then it expands to this, you know, wall piece that would fit here. So I kind of like that. It's a lot of sewing. Then I came up with this. So Rebecca, you can kind of see how I was looking at your things yesterday. So this arches from the ceiling to the wall. So the figure's still in there, plus we added ponies. This I did as a collaboration with an intern of mine, Sarah Beth Noggles, printmaker, and we just worked back and forth. I like boxes. I love making boxes and then doing images that fit into the box. It makes me happy. These texts are all taken from romance novels, which I'll talk more about this afternoon probably. So, I'm just going to flip through this. So this is an artist book. It's a unique book. One of the other things I was dealing with, like in Atlanta, was the failed love relationship. Has anyone ever had that happen? It's fun, isn't it? Well, actually, this book was kind of horrifying to make because I was so angry. And I usually think I'm a nice person. I try to be a good person and all that. And I was really unhappy and angry. Has anyone ever experienced that maybe? I don't know. But I think that I've usually like shoved that aside and try to be nice or whatever. But I put all the pissiness in this particular book. And I wrote a poem. It's called FedEx Book. And I wrote a poem that's like a letter to this person saying, I'm so sorry that your boyfriend was hit and killed by a FedEx truck. It's too bad since you just bought a new condo together and your career is going so well and you're so happy. And then the last line is, I got a new job, I like it a lot. Which sort of implies the writer maybe got a job driving a FedEx truck, you don't know. So anyway, it's kind of like I really put all the horror of me in this book, and so I never talk about it or share it, so I guess I am now.
So is it like text, picture, text, when the books are actually like put together? Like I don't see much
Okay,
text
there's
in
two things. You know what? There's two questions. Say them one at a time, please.
Well, you were saying that you were narrating the story, and I don't see any text. I was wondering when you put the books together, is it like page text, picture, or is the text hidden in here?
Got it. So there, can you see text hidden there, anybody?
FedEx, yeah.
Well, there's that, but can you see other text? So there's handwriting. And so I wrote the poem out across wet paint, across the pages of the book as I was making it, but you can't read it, and I'm happy with that. And then I thought, I mean, I didn't say this before, I really embarrass and horrify myself a lot with what I make, which I'm fine with. And in this case, I didn't want people to read the poem. I think it implicated me as the writer too much in being a total horror show. So I didn't actually, I have the poem printed and I was always going back and forth. Should I put this with the book or should I allow the viewer to just experience the book? And I don't like things to be too direct. So I think I'm happy without the poem ever being read or seen or anything by anybody. But then you get a sense of something there, right? And I think that's okay. So, yeah, that says I like it a lot, which is the last line of the poem. Can you read that? So you get a flavor of it. You don't get the whole thing. And I think that's okay. And then, yes, the book is hand-sewn. So can you read that? That's thread. Mm-hmm. I paint all the pages, then I flip them over and do the other side and keep going back and forth between sides. Ideally, I'd have a huge table with all the pieces of paper and draw across them and flip it over and then let it dry and flip and keep going. This has mulberry paper that's waxed to be translucent. So you would actually flip that translucent waxy page over and then get the image underneath. It sort of adds a different element for the reader, for me, to experience the book. Who knows? Like that. This is a book I made a year ago, so just in a different space, I think. It's called Had You Only Known, and it's got a lot, same thing, hand-painted pages with text that you actually can read some of. There's 4-page spreads. That. If I don't have models, like I, can occasionally pay a model to pose for me, then I go to Sports Illustrated and maybe eroticize the figures or not, or all sorts of other publications or online ads. People are posting all sorts of crazy stuff online that you can just use. So I draw from photos as well as real life. I did a whole book about, just taking people's photos where it's funny what people think is cute and what's really cute to you, or not. So there's text. It says it was the ecstasy of the divine, the spiritual glory from God, which is taken from a romance novel, which whatever. I like this book a lot. I don't know why. I like the colors. I just feel happy when I paint and draw. So I showed this before in the old series, Your One Black Friend, and I pulled it back in to talk about that tar drawing method. So these are some portraits I did of like homeless kids on a residency in Denver. You can see more of that. But I was trying to figure out how to put that into book and page form. So I experimented with materials and came up with this I call gesso drawing or something. Instead of tar, I have gesso on paper and scratch through. And I've also been thinking about carbon paper and how to use that for drawing. So I found this old carbon paper with letters and then I drew on top, and the drawing that resulted is one thing, and then the carbon paper on the window is giving something else. I like that. And then you can't read the backwards writing again. I make my own carbon paper. And so this is a carbon tracing. You guys know what carbon paper is? It's kind of old school technology at this point. Does it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make
So carbon paper, well, that's the second thing. So carbon paper is for old-timey typewriting, and you needed a copy of something, and we didn't have any way to do that. So you would have a piece of paper that had ink on the back, or carbon really, on the back of it. It's very thin, tissue thin paper with a layer of black on the back. So one side is tissue paper looking, and then the other side is black usually, although that was blue that I had. This was blue. So what it would be is you would put your paper on top of that and another paper behind it, and you type, and then you have two copies because the carbon transfers the typing to the page behind. So you have 3 pieces of paper, but you end up with 2 copies, so you put the original in the mail and then you keep the copy. Carbon paper. So I'm making my own carbon paper with ink on paper, and I like it. I like all the messiness, like my fingerprints here, just from what I did. How I make it is very simple. Is anyone here in the workshop Saturday? Becky, I know, is going to be there. Is anyone else? Is anyone here? You are? Great. So we're going to try this in our workshop Saturday, but basically you just take, it's printmaking, monotypey kind of thing. Maybe Demir has done this before, I don't know, but I roll ink on the plexiglass or glass and get it on the brayer, and then I transfer it to a piece of paper in even or unevenness, and then I flip that on top of the surface that I want to draw on, and then draw and scratch through, and it transfers the ink. So we had talked about a trace monotype this morning. This is a little different version of that, right? I call it carbon paper just because I like that. So, you know, but you get, and even if I'm tracing a photo, I still say it's mine. Like it was an interesting conversation in Demir's class about appropriation and copyright and all that this morning. And, you know, I think for me, like, I used to feel guilty that I was tracing photos. Because I drew a lot, and I was like, I know how to draw. But then I was like, I like this is what I want to do, and it's still my hand in there. So if one traced a copyrighted, trademarked image, I wonder what that would be. Whole other thing. So then you get an interesting ghost action happening. This is just from the studio. Like that wasn't even intent. That was the undersheet that was just randomly there to protect the table. But I like the way that looks even. And then I was experimenting and came up with another thing around like trace monotype, where I traced this figure and then I ran it through, and that's the ghost, which is the second press run. And then this was a third press run with another method. So doing this printmaking method, I came up with 3 ways to get that traced image. And I'm just showing this. So this is a little bit of a development of these pieces that I'll show next. This is all from this winter. So that's a carbon paper drawn figure. And then these are the finished pieces that I'll run through. And I can show a little bit of the development if I go back to the other thing. So again, lots of layers. This is the most current work. But those figures are all carbon transferred images. sometimes I wonder, I know when to stop, but I have to fine-tune my consciousness to really know that it's done. I'll show you maybe the development of these guys here, and you'll be like, why didn't you stop here, 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 here? Because there's so many layers. So this will be a book. It's called The History of Western Man. I took those book pages, did drawings and printing, and a lot of other stuff on top. All the hatch marks and the leaves are carbon, like drawn with carbon paper. This is an ink drawing. That's a transfer. That's from the same series, a little simpler. I like the way that carbon paper method looks, though. Like, you could say how sloppy that is, maybe. I just like that. And then it ends here. And those are like, you know, traced photos, but it's distorted. Same thing. So I'm going to just hang on there. That's a whole conversation. So how much time? How are we doing? It is, what time is it?
12.
Okay. So we're okay on time? So just to show you, so these are the pieces that I was showing you, and then so this is on the press, obviously. You know, so that's an early stage. So I'm really working a lot of layers. I could have stopped there. You hardly see the orange rectangle on the finished pieces. You know what I'm saying? So just keep adding a lot of layers. These aren't even the ones I was trying to show you, but you get a sense of it. Sorry, I'm going to move forward. So that was one of the finished pieces I just showed you, right? So you see, like, I just had so many more layers when it's all done. But I could have stopped there and said this is complete, you know. Like, that blue's really pretty, but I covered most of it up. Oh well.
Do you already have a sense of what colors you're going to use, or it just develops as you go?
I mix as I go, usually. I mean, I might be like, I want blue, and then make a blue. Quick review. Here we are. Thank you. Look at that. Oh, FedEx dead. Okay, thank you. Nice. Carbon. That's always nice to have a review. So I think one of the things that interests me societal-wise as I look at my work is looking at, you know, African American bodies, male bodies, sexuality, eroticism, whiteness. And does anyone know Glenn Ligon's work, painter? Well, he does more than that. But, you know, there's a famous piece where he's quoting the writer Zora Neale Hurston, and it's just text, and it says, "I feel most black when I'm thrown up against a white background." So it's a famous quote of hers that he turned into a painting. So one of the things I think about is feeling like we don't talk about whiteness, what it is to be white. I think white culture is less self-conscious about itself. It's like the water white people swim in and we don't talk about it. And I'm interested in that whole coming to consciousness, because especially around things like white privilege that I think could be addressed are just interesting things. And not to be guilty, like I've certainly looked at guilt, and that's always a lot of fun. I don't think guilt is useful, so it's more important to see, like, this is what I'm committed to, this is what I want to see happen, and what I want to change. So anyway, with a woodblock print I did on this residency this winter, I'd been posting the progress of the print. And a friend of mine named Mr. Nicety, he has the best name, Mr. Nicety, I love that name, that's why I left it up there. So he sent me some photos of his face, and I did kind of a portrait of him with a simple woodblock print. I was posting the progress. You guys know color reduction printing. So you print a color, you carve it out, then you print the next color and carve that out. And so people were commenting on my photos, and then an old high school friend in Ohio said, "Who is this man you are always drawing?" And then, someone says, "I know it ain't me, LOL. Yeah, who is that? That's the guy I'm sort of flirting with. Who is that? Mr. Nicety goes, "Me." Anyway, I just thought it was funny that the person up top was like seeing all my work and seeing one person. Like seeing my one black friend. Because maybe he has one black friend, but I have many black friends among Asian and all that. I have many straight friends. I have many whatever friends. But he saw one black guy looking at all of my artwork. Who is this guy you're always drawing? I don't know. I like that. Because I think it speaks in a way. Like, would he have said that if it were, seemingly Caucasian models? Or, you know what I mean? Like, it was just an interesting way to sort of revelatory. And I just am interested in sort of about that. Does that make sense? So these are the, some of these prints. They're studio shots. I did them on book pages as well as on paper. And so like, Demir, that's when I was like, it's not dark enough for me, the last layer. So, yeah. So I'm going to finish those up. That one was dark enough, but then I kept changing the color through the edition, and some of them weren't as dark as I wanted. So, quick question, anything? Thoughts, opinions, suggestions, concerns?
How come all of like your, murder stories that you've investigated, or like the violent story you told, sort of about your ex-girlfriend involved people getting run over by trucks?
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? I don't know. James Byrd, I knew about that murder, and it was horrific, and a lot of people were thinking about it at the time. The J.R. Warren murder didn't get a lot of attention, but something about it spoke to me to where I came back to look at that story 5 years after it happened. The FedEx thing was probably my unconscious. Like, that was just something I made up. Like,
maybe because you were dealing with those other murders, like.
I think so, but I was in post-murder fallout, and one of the things is I don't have regrets, and I don't traffic in regret, and I'm clear. Like for years, I just lived for my art, which is great, and then like I was saying to Rose last night, I didn't have a life. My life was my art, which is great, but Freud. If you like Freud or if you don't, I don't know, but. He said to live a good life, you need work and love. So I had all work and, not love, really. Whatever love is. It could be love of cooking, like my mom loved cooking, and that was like love for her in a way. But, I just survived and made my art. And so I was really dealing with the anger about what I had created for myself in my own life, which was that all I did was travel. And all I did was my work, and then it was unbalanced. I was just as bad as any IBM executive. I would want to say you are a workaholic, because that's all I had. So it made sense that would be about, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know.
Rory?
Yeah.
I'm wondering about, you mentioned white privilege, and sometimes I know the curator comes up to me, like when I'm doing a show of Native American artists, or, it's just, sometimes I have questions about, like, okay, representation, who's representing whom,
yeah.
And a certain sense of privilege, like, well, if nobody else is doing this particular project or whatever, I have the best of intentions, but I'm just wondering if those questions ever come up for you with the representation.
I've gotten a lot of shade from especially black gay, do you guys know shade? Black gay term, kind of like, snotty, kind of like ew, or...
Dissatisfied response?
Yeah, dissatisfied response, yes. I have taken shade from people. Like, I'm an activist in a way, and I consider myself, like the J.R. Warren Project was an activist art project. And, trying to talk, and part of it's intellectuals, like especially in New York, there's some really smart people, and maybe they're being like, they want this, I don't know, but I have taken shade from people. But it's kind of like, well, I'm a white dude, and at least I'm doing something. Could you at least throw me a coin? But they sometimes don't, and in the past, and I'd be like, that's fine, I can't even worry about that. It's not about me. If it were about me, that would be a bigger concern. But my work is not about me. My work is about the work. And tangentially, I think the social commitments. Because if your work is purely only political, then why be an artist? For me, I could write essays.
And you have there's an eroticized aspect to some of them.
Oh, totally.
Black.
Yeah. So then people are like, oh, you're objectifying the black male. And, well, in a way, I think that's important in that part of what I see is this slavery, our unresolved history there. Slavery was about the control of bodies. It wasn't purely forced labor for work. It was, you know, I mean, we have a whole population of mixed race people, and no one's purely white, whatever that is anyway, if you go back to, you know, human origins. But, you know, rape was part of slavery practice. So I think that looking at bodies is an important part of that. That's just my take on it.
And how it's done also in terms of if there's an intention to bring that awareness.
Yeah, and I can't just, I'm not writing essays. I can't do it that way. And I can only speak for me and myself. Like, I'm not XYZ. I can't speak for other people. I can just say what I see or think about. And ultimately, as an artist, I think, too, if you're compromising what you are doing for an audience, then you're also potentially compromising your work in a way. I don't know. It gets complicated.
I have a question about the eroticism aspect as well. Like, I'm writing a paper about, like, erotic art and porn right now, and I'm curious, like, do you think a lot of the erotic imagery for you is, like, supposed to be symbolic of, like, a further discussion of sexuality, or are you really expressing more of, like, a sexual form with the body?
I don't understand your question.
Is it meant for us to, like, really appreciate the body in its sexual form, or are we supposed to read deeper into it and that this is the objectification, slavery?
I don't know. It's up to you.
Okay.
I couldn't say. I think if you're eroticizing male bodies, you might eroticize my images. If you're not, it's like, oh, it's a cat. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, if you showed me a nude female erotic figure, I'd be like, oh, it's a nice drawing or it's not a nice drawing. I wouldn't be all, like, sex head about it. Does that make sense? Like, if I look at Egon Schiller's work, I'm like, that's really cool. I love the color. I love the line. But seriously, for me, I'm a Kinsey 6. It could be like a kitty. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, a nice kitty cat. Like, that's what I would see. I wouldn't think about the naked female body that way. It's just how I'm experiencing my consciousness right now in this particular seeming lifetime. So, I'll move ahead. So these pieces were done for a project last summer called You Think I Can Eat All That Chicken Here? There's that chicken thing that popped in again. The title is from a story. A friend of mine's a big black performer who looks like a football player, and he was in a store in Houston, and a chicken restaurant, and this obese black woman's in front of him, and she says, I want 12 buckets of chicken, and the girl at the counter says, to stay or to go. And she says, what do you mean to stay or to go? You think I can eat all that chicken here? And the girl goes, I don't know your life. So that's the story he told, and I just thought it was funny, so I kind of, borrowed that for this project. This is where I was going to do this huge installation of hanging books, and it turned into a video project where I was doing videos on top of these mixed media pieces. So this first one, you'll see that bedroom set in a little bit, but all these ended up being backdrops. And I shot these videos with these tiny 6-inch dolls that I transmogrified some of them and redressed and redid their hair and stuff. Do you remember Dawn dolls? You guys remember them from the early 70s? I don't know. They're like this tall. They're fashion competitors or Barbies that died out. But they're really fun. So these were all backdrops. So I ended up doing 2 videos. And these were all pieces I did to serve as a set piece. So these are some of the promo still shots from the videos. One is called To Stay or To Go, and it's about a chicken restaurant worker. This one is a chicken restaurant worker who goes through past life regression hypnotherapy and discovers she was an escaped slave. And then it's her journey to the Ohio River, and it's a music video. And then the other one is called Scene, and I took a scene plus some other stuff. But has anyone seen the movie Mandingo from the early 70s? It's a plantation slave drama, and it has a horrible ending. And I took the scene where the white woman, who's a little crazy, says to the black male slave, if you don't do what I want, and she means if you don't have sex with me, I'll tell Papa Daddy you raped me. And so he does, and then all hell breaks loose. Because she gets pregnant. Anyway, whatever. So I took that little blackmail scene, and I had people from the community come and act out the scene over and over again. I'm trying to get somewhere else. And I was so sick of all the violence and stuff I've been thinking about, and the goal was to use humor to talk about the same issues. So I was trying to have a humorous take on something that maybe wasn't funny, but also, you know, I don't like lecturing to people, and I don't know if I've been lecturing to you today or not. I don't really enjoy that format or framework for talking. I like dialogue and such. So I was trying to come up with a different way to address the similar issues, and this is what I came up with. And just spliced it. It's a montage of... Oh, we need to do this.
Hush your mouth! I'm gonna tell him. Listen, you do what I say. I'm gonna tell everything. Just like I said, everything. He won't believe you.
So it's low production value. Really crappy value. Production value. Like the set shape.
Who to believe you? He won't. You're nothing but a pokey-haired, old dress busted ass-looking bimbo. Oh, no. And besides, haven't you ever wanted to be with a delightful, large-eyed, antennaed individual from outer space before?
So, she's doing what would be the white lady's role, and the other one is the black guy's role.
Please, my knife proboscis.
They were all improvising.
What was the name of that movie?
Hush your mouth! I can tell him everything! Just like I said, everything! He won't believe you. He'll believe me! Besides, you ain't got nothing on me! And even if you did, who'll believe you? You're nothing but a top-hatted, clown-faced, yellow-dressed, red-booted bozo! But, you know, ain't you never craved a person with a different colored face and body before? Well...
Ain't you ever craved a brown skin, orange dress, China made doll?
Come in here! I'm telling you, come in here! What is it? What's going on? I don't understand. Hush your mouth. I gotta tell him. Listen, you do what I want, I'ma tell him. I'ma tell him everything. No. Just like I said. Oh, no. Everything. No. He won't believe you. He'll believe me. Besides, you ain't got nothing on me. And even if you did, who'd believe you? You're a two-bit, yellow, nasty dress-wearing, red-headed, snatcher-weaving... ugly thing.
So,
come in here. I'm telling you, come.
I'm not going to show the whole thing because it's a 20-minute video, but kind of the thing is that out of doing this, I went home and then back to New York. And then my mom passed away in November, and I had to deal with all that. And I was really, I don't know, I've been all over the place since then. And I have an iPhone now. So I started to take photos on my iPhone. And I was still working with these little dolls, and I decided on Valentine's Day that I would do Valentine's photos for my friends on Facebook. So I posted, like, in a day and a half, 150 of these photos, just on people's walls. And that was fun, and then I decided to, so still using the same cast of characters and all that, and like personalizing them, like if I had, you know, a couple that was gay and an alien, then I did that one for them or whatever, you know, and it was fun, and it sort of made me happy, and that's what I was going for. And then I did a birthday card for somebody. And since then, I've been doing birthday cards for everybody every day with these little paper cakes and a scene like that. And that's been arduous and kind of fun. And it's interesting because some people ignore it. And Facebook birthdays are overwhelming anyway if you have more than 3 friends, because everyone's like, happy birthday! And you're like, oh my God. But